Hello and welcome to the Daily Ramble here on Claret and Booze. My name's Gary and got a few things to discuss today. Firstly, I don't want to get you all downbeat, but just imagine we got relegated and then, like David Sullivan keeps telling his mates in the press, that he decides to keep David Moyes on. And I want to talk about what would that actually look like, because it wouldn't look good. Or how would it turn out? And then, should we focus on the league? You know, some people have been saying that the Conference League is just a waste of time. I don't think so, but I just want to discuss that point. And then I want to give you an example. After talking about David Moyes and whether or not we should chase a much needed cup, I want to give you an example of the thought pattern of a progressive manager in Will Still, just to show you, to clearly differentiate how he works, how his mind operates compared to that of David Moyes. And finally, a few minutes talking about Declan flashing his knickers to Arsenal again. So on with the show. By the way, give this video a watch, and if you like it, please subscribe to our channel, Claret and Booze. It helps us a lot. Hit the like button and the bell notification icon. So on with the show. So say, for instance, just a hypothetical situation. And by the way, I don't believe this is true. I don't believe that if we got relegated, David Sullivan would be embracing David Moyes and saying, "You're the man to get us up again." I tell you what David Sullivan would be doing is exactly what he's done in previous times, right? The first thing is everyone will be pointing at the board and saying, "You are incompetent, you are rubbish," right? They'll all be pointing at David Sullivan's door. And what would David Sullivan's immediate reaction be? It would be to blame someone else and throw someone under the bus. And it would be deserved in this case. But my guess is that someone would be David Moyes. It'd be gone. There's no way David Moyes can get a team after spending 200 million and finishing in 7th last season to get that team relegated. There's no way he stays. So look, it's hypothetical, but say, for instance, it did happen. Say, for instance, we found ourselves in a championship with David Moyes as a manager and he's got to get us back at the first attempt. Now, how would David Moyes go about doing that? Bear in mind, he has only one mode of playing football, the kind of dogs of war, approach that he takes that he's taken in the past with Everton, with Preston. And by the way, he's never got a team promoted out of the championship either. We know very well David Moyes likes to be the underdog. He likes to be the ones to spring a surprise on teams. He doesn't like to, when expectation gets too much, like for instance the semi-final of the Europa League last year, or when we're expected to actually beat a team and qualify for the Champions League, which was being predicted for us several times last year. When it gets to that point and it actually becomes an expectation, that's when he seems to fall down. So that's the first thing. But can you imagine his brand of football, that 4-2-3-1, give the opposition the ball and wait and play on the counter-attack, working in the Championship? Because that ain't how teams win the Championship. Let me tell you, in the Championship, what they tend to do is they score a lot of goals, they win a lot of games, they draw a few, but they largely win a lot of games, and they get promoted very, very quickly. What David Moyes, I suspect, would do would be going down to the London Stadium for a home game against Reading. A wet Tuesday night, I think it's Tuesdays they play on. We'd be giving Reading the ball and we'd be sitting back and waiting for an opportunity to counter-attack. Reading would have 60 or 70% possession and it just wouldn't work out too well, would it? That is not how you get promoted. Teams who play like David Moyes and get more draws than wins tend to not finish in the playoffs, tend to not get promoted first time. Just being solid is not a way to win games and get promoted quickly in the Championship. So a complete waste of time, a complete nightmare, and I don't think it'd last very long if that happened, right? So that's what I think. Also, I mean, if you look at, that's not only the top two teams like Burnley, who score loads of goals, literally loads of goals, and Sheffield United as well, who score only slightly less. They even go down to 6th place, Millwall. They've won 17 and drawn 9 of their 38 games. That's only 12 losses. That's only 12 losses. And you've got to bear in mind, we would be the shining attraction in that league. Teams would want to come to the London Stadium and really do a job on us, right? And every team would be like that. If we stayed down in the Championship for a couple of seasons, that would wear off. But Please God, we don't. I mean, I want to keep on being the main attraction if we go down, and the only way to do that is get promoted quickly. So we're going to have to put up with that as well. People are going to be looking at that as their cup final. I'm not being funny. There ain't many massive stadiums like the London Stadium in a championship. So look, Moyes is not going to be a plucky underdog. We're going to be like the Man United of the championship. So anyway, what should we be doing this season to avoid that outcome? Right. So we're currently in the quarterfinal against Ghent of the Conference League. We're also third from bottom in the Premier League. Are you inclined to say, let's focus on the Premier League and let's forget the Conference League? Because according to some people, and this ain't the majority by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just what I see written when we're doing shows. You see in the chat and stuff like that, and you see from people on Twitter that it's a Tin Pot League, a Tin Pot Cup, it's two bob. Listen, it's a major cup, it's a major trophy. Our only European success has been in the Cup Winners' Cup. When the last time I think it was the last time we played in it, which was 1981. After we won the FA Cup in 1980, it was the third tier of European competition. The Conference League is the third tier of European competition. Now, I realise there's this, this flow down, this trickle down of teams from Champions League to the Europa League to the Conference League, and people don't like that because it turns it into a kind of consolation competition. And I agree with that. I think that's a bit rubbish. At the same time, every one of these cups, and the Europa League, we saw it, once it gets to the quarterfinal, the Europa League is a real proper competition, isn't it? And the Conference League seems to be that way as well. I mean, yeah, the teams are not as good as what you'd find in the Europa League, but these are still, good, strong teams. We're not going to have an easy ride of it, so it's going to be tough, and we're going to have to use our squad if we're going to progress in that competition and hopefully win it. I still don't, I've still got my doubts as to whether we will. When David Moyes was talking about this competition, he said, I'd like to go one step further than last year. Well, no, I don't want to go one step further than last year. That means we get to the final. I want to win the final. I want to go two steps further. So anyway, that didn't, maybe I'm just being a little bit picky with that one, but it did annoy me. Why not be confident? But anyway, look, it's not going to come down as a choice. Like, you either focus on the Conference League, and we've got potentially 5 games to go there, or you focus on the Premier League. We've got almost a fully fit squad. We've got 1 or 2 niggles. We've got almost a fully fit squad coming into the last couple of months of the season. Why can we not focus on both? And how can we as West Ham afford to turn our nose up against the chance of winning a cup, a major trophy? And it is a major trophy because it gets you into the Europa League group stage the following year, right? Tell me what you think in the comments. In favour of it? Want to go on both? Want to go Europe and the Premier League, or do you just want to forget about Europe altogether? Each to their own. So anyway, so talking about David Moyes and how miserable he would be because he knows everything and he's a bit of a narcissist and he has one way of playing and that is all, and he won't entertain any other way of playing. Put 2 up front? God, no. Right. Anyway, I know a lot of teams don't play 2 up front. Football's not gone that way. We had that very interesting discussion the other night where we had the caller who said 4-4-2 is so last century. Yeah, might come around again though, eh? Now, Will Still, I think we've all started taking an interest in him since we found out he was a West Ham supporter. We now know his dad was a West Ham supporter, which is where he got it from. And they were talking about him. He was interviewed on Sky and said, what's your ambition? So I'd love to manage in the Premier League. So it's like any player or manager would love to play or manage in the Premier League, and I'm no different. He's got an interesting background in that he wasn't a player, and he's kind of trained himself and been to university and done all sorts to get himself to this to actually become a football coach, by trade, which is very different to our, you imagine you've had a long playing career and then you do your badges and then you go and you start at a lower league side and everything else, which is the route that most players take. But then again, there've been a lot of managers who have not been notable players who have been very successful. I mean, to name but 2, you would say Arsene Wenger and Jose Mourinho, right? So let's not put his lack of playing experience. Let's face it. No amount of playing experience helps Steven Gerrard. He's tactically naive, right? It's all about the person. Management is about the character and what's going on inside his head. And does he have the character to understand, strategize, and to get a group of men to carry out his instructions? It seems that he does. I mean, his recent run, it went on 20 games unbeaten, Rennes, and they only lost to the second place Marseille at the weekend to bring that run to an end. They asked him as well, said, who do you admire? And he came back and he said Alex Ferguson, and it wasn't because of Alex Ferguson's won all these trophies and everything else, even though that was part of it. Success equals trophies. However, what he said he was so impressed with the way Alex Ferguson, over his entire term at Man United, managed to constantly refresh the team. You imagine from when Alex Ferguson started at Man U to when he finished, football had changed completely, right? He'd been through umpteen different coaches. He'd been through umpteen different playing styles. He's managed. He got rid of players that we thought there was no way he could get rid of that player at their peak. People like Van Nistelrooy, people like Beckham, and that's what Will Still admires. He admires the fact that Alex Ferguson had the ability to constantly change and evolve and keep that team at the top. Never once did Alex Ferguson sit in his hands and think, right, I know everything, I've got nothing to learn, I'm just going to play this way using the same players. And that's what separates. That's really why David Moyes taking over from Alex Ferguson was such a fucking disaster, right? Because they were, one believes he knows it all, and one basically did a lot of learning for 20 years. And they said to Will Still, you're 30 years old now. When you're 35, will the 35-year-old Will Still be a better manager than a 30-year-old Will Still? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'm learning all the time, learning and getting better all the time as things evolve, as football changes, as tactics evolve and everything else. This is not a manager who has a little bit of success with Everton. I mean, really, what we achieved last year and the year before is the summit of David Moyes' career success. That is success to David Moyes, right? Finishing 6th, finishing 7th. That is success to him. What he did when he was successful, he will continue trying to do. And that's what he's done this year, and that's why it's fucked up so much. You wouldn't get that with Will Still, with a progressive manager. You wouldn't get that with any other progressive manager either. So look, I mean, I know it's a pipe dream, and I know it'll probably take us not getting relegated, David Sullivan leaving the club, new owners coming in, and, one day, eventually, we will get, not necessarily Will Still, but a progressive manager. Someone who thinks like that. Someone who doesn't bloody know it all, right? Football changes all the time. It constantly evolves. You need a manager that can evolve with it and get his team to evolve. Otherwise, you end up in this same situation where you need to swap the manager out every 18 months. Kind of where we are, isn't it? So, on to my final story, and this is around Dec, who's done everything but be pictured in an Arsenal shirt. To be honest, he's been pictured with Bakary Saka and Ian Wright. They've made a TikTok video together, lots of hugging, lots of laughing, lots of stuff, and I don't blame him for that. That's fine, but it does play right into the narrative of Arsenal. We've already signed the player. It's like and Dec himself, he seems to have no problem when somebody plays him, plays to his strengths. For instance, on Marco Verratti, who is going to play against him for Italy in midfield. He's a PSG midfielder. He's been saying how much he admires Dec and how good he is and stuff like that. And he said one day he'll play for a top club, which no doubt he will. And Dec don't mind taking praise like that, and he will never turn around and say, "Hang on, I'm a West Ham captain. Everything I'm doing is focused on West Ham." No, he won't do that. He will not push back on someone like that. However, if you say something Dec don't like, so for instance, you know, Graham Souness. I'm not a great Souness lover, but what he said about Dec was pretty true. And I think Roy Keane agrees with Souness on this as well. And that is, to be a great midfielder, you need to defend, you need to create, you need to score goals. And Dec does one of those. And that's what Souness said. He said he does one of them, he needs to do all three. And Dec came out and said, well, yeah, that's not really fair, because you don't watch me, Graham Souness doesn't watch me playing for West Ham every week. It's like, you don't need to watch you playing for West Ham, Dec. You just got to check the stats. What are your assists? What are your goals? I mean, there's hardly any, right? You're not a goal-scoring midfielder. You're someone who gets a goal once in a blue moon. But I find it strange that Dec will react to something like that. That's not even a massive criticism. You know, he sort of jumps up. Whereas when someone says about, oh, you're such a great player, you play for a big side one day, he doesn't turn around and defend West Ham. I mean, I suppose it's too much to ask for our captain to do that, but hey, there you go. That's just me. Perhaps being picky. Anyway, look, that's me done. I hope you've enjoyed this video. The Booze Cast, I think, is recording tonight. Not with me. I think that's going to be with John and Nick and hopefully Nigel. But until next time, by the way, leave a comment. Please hit like on the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to Claret & Booze on YouTube and hit the bell notification icon. Until next time, see you soon and come on you irons.